Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of the Backyard SportsCenter podcast. I am your host, Natetastic 28. This podcast is going to be everything that is related to the two backyard servers that we have for the main two leagues. One is the BBOL, which is the initial league that was founded about 4 years ago, which entails having a draft of generics and the backyard kids and the pros from either 2001, 2003, or a mix like we have been doing this season, and playing against the other team's AI. The other league/Discord that we have is the online Discord, which is for the online baseball and football leagues and just casual playing. That was very nicely re-enabled by Little Cat, that we are all indebted to and extremely thankful for being able to play live PvP against each other for Backyard Football and Backyard Baseball 2001. This podcast will be going into more of the Backyard Baseball Online League. And today I am joined by QuestionMonkey.
Hey, yeah, thanks so much for having me. Honored to be the first guest.
Why don't you give a little introduction about yourself and kind of what you have done for different leagues you participated in, what you kind of do around these parts of the woods?
Sure. Yeah, I guess in the context of the online league, I am, along with you, Vissery, Jibbo, and Jaylund, adminning the league this season. I've also done a lot of dev work. I mean, Little Cat deserves about 90% of the credit for bringing Backyard Baseball and Football Online back to life, as you said. But I've also done some dev work on the site and helped get this new build put together and enabled these custom teams, which we are using in this season. I play in the RBBL as well. It's my second season, both of which have been consistently mediocre but not awful. Cool community. I'm glad to have been able to come across it. However, I came across it on Reddit, I guess, maybe a little over a year ago.
Yeah, glad to have you on the podcast, and glad to have you, in the community and, playing and doing all the other behind-the-scenes things that you have done, including the Prince Rupert generics that weren't initially available in the game that was about 20 years ago when it came out, and people were playing one of the first games that actually had live player versus player.
Yeah, it's definitely gratifying to see the league come together, in large part. I mean, this season in large part thanks to Vissery has probably done the most work, legwork, Google Sheets wrangling, player, coach communication, all the above. But anyway, it's cool to see the work that went into the build and the website sort of translate into not just casual play, but also this awesome league that we have going.
And speaking of the league that we have going, we have doubled the participation from last season, going from 12 people that have signed up in the season to now 24 players this season, which is the biggest that we've had in our 3 seasons.
Yeah, it's, doubling participation is a lot. I feel like if in the NBA or MLB, you double the amount of teams, probably within a couple of years, half the teams would fold due to having started a team in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which I'm sure is a great city, but might not have the population for an NBA team. Anyway, the analogy I'm getting at is that it was a big jump, and we weren't really sure if the community was ready to have 24 players who were going to be dedicated enough to go through a long and fairly intense draft as far as the amount of preparation you have to do. Of course, you can just kind of Viscery provided all these awesome tools that make some of that a lot easier, but it's a lot of work to draft, and you're committing to playing 11 regular season games plus potentially playoffs. It was a big sort of leap of faith. I feel expanding so much, and so far it seems all the players are locked in, a lot of coaches, I should say. It was cool to see the draft go, for the most part, super well, and the community all sort of chatting throughout the week and getting along and making fun of each other's picks and complimenting each other's picks and just kind of discussing the players. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, one thing that we weren't sure about when we were in admin chat, as far as the speed of the timer, because we reduced it from what our BBL does with 3 hours. We cut it in half to 1.5. So we were a little uncertain of how that was going to play out, but it went perfectly. People were submitting their picks. People were going the back and forth and trash talking, and you shouldn't have made that pick, and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, I think it worked out well. I mean, that definitely made it maybe more intense, but also, helped get it done in, I don't know, maybe like 5-ish days, I want to say. Something like that.
Yeah, I think it was about that.
How many players? Like 216? Is that right? Yeah, 216.
That sounds right from what Vissery said. And he's done, like you said, he's done all these spreadsheets and a whole bunch of communicating and admin and dev stuff. So, shout out to Vissery for everything he's done as well. Yes. So
huge shout out. Yeah, should we get into some of these teams?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, and so by the time this comes out, the sheet that we're looking at, you all, anyone in the league or anyone on the Backyard Sports Online server, will also be able to look at another cool Google sheet that Vissery's put together with stats and standings. And so maybe as you're listening to this, you can scroll through each of these teams along with us as we sort of digest and preview them.
So the first one that we have is Loba and the Florida Marlins. Their home field this season is Dirt Yards. Loba, for those of you that do not know, is our reigning champion from season 1. See how he does this season. It's always a challenge to repeat and do it again.
Got the target on your back.
Yeah. Not going to surprise anyone anymore. So
really, it's like the new build is kind of the whole new. It's not a new game, but it's fairly different as far as the skills and the strategy. The fact that you can actually put up some runs.
And it does feel almost like a new game, even with the online draft versus the RBBL draft. It felt like two completely different drafts. I mean, obviously there was some similarities, but just like where people were going and what attributes people were prioritizing was almost completely different, and it made it feel like a totally different thing.
Yeah, and the meta is still kind of in flux, and no one really knows what. It's hard to say that anyone made good picks or bad picks because we haven't even played a season with this game yet. We'll see. I'm sure there are a lot of picks that you might think are good right now that turn out a few months at the end of the season. We're like, that was a reach, and vice versa.
So going into the picks that Loba made, his team is Chico Papas, Caffey Wolf, Sally Dobbs, Marty Cardova, Molly May, Uma Morris, Tina Herrera, Terry Vega, and Deanna Hayes. First couple thing that stands out to me is that he has picked Sally Dobbs again. He had pretty good success last season with her, so picking players that that you can succeed with is a pretty good recipe for succeeding. Another thing that I noticed is that he picked Marty Cardova, kind of the meme of our first season, being undrafted, and halfway through the season they were like, why did we not pick him?
Yeah, underrated last year, but no longer flying under the radar. Yeah, a couple things that stand out, just team overall, and I think this is probably kind of coming from his draft strategy. A lot of power, a lot of big arms, and that maybe a little bit at the expense of speed in some cases and contact in some cases. A lot of poor eyes. So, I mean, maybe that's just expresses some confidence that he has in his ability to, identify strikes and balls. So let's see, looking at this team, who's going to catch for them, who's going to pitch for them? They have a lot of arms, so definitely some options in that regard.
You might put Marty behind the dish.
Yeah, Marty would be a good choice.
Also could put Tina possibly with 87 arm, 100 throw.
Yeah. A lot of big arms for sure. Molly May, catch. So Dirt Yards is not I think it is actually the same speed as Sandy Flats, even though you'd think that a beach is slower than dirt. Oh no, never mind. I take that back. Dirt Yards is the same speed as all the as Ekman Acres and Steel Stadium. It's
the grass fields.
Yeah, and there are some funny bounces on Dirt Yards. It has that building in right center field that makes it, it's still 3/4 of the outfield is homerable, and in fact the left field fence is just that little kind of a parking barrier, so it's pretty homerable fence there. But the building in right center, I would think, makes it less homer friendly than Steele or Parks number 2.
I don't think it's as big of a deal this season with left field being fixed. Last season when, you're trying to basically have a bunch of, left-handed hitters trying to, pull the ball, it would be a more detriment last season. I don't think it'll be that much of a problem since you'll be able to pull the ball with like Chico and Sally and Molly. Home runs won't be a problem. If anything's a problem, it's going to be his speed.
Yeah, speed for sure could be a problem. Pitching, like, I see a few kind of like capable pitchers on this team. Definitely no one like workhorse kind of, starter, pencil them in for 6 solid innings kind of pitcher. We'll see. It remains to be seen in this build, in this rule set, how much top end pitching matters. But that could be one weakness for him.
Low stamina as well. A lot of players are in the low 50s or 40s even.
Yeah, I had like no idea how to value stamina in this draft. Like in RBBL, you gotta be worried about if some team puts up 15 runs on your AI defense in a few innings, then like if your team has low stamina, then like suddenly all your players are like walking in molasses and can't go anywhere, and that 15 runs like snowballs into like 40. Like Mav dropped on me this past week. I mean, that's not quite the case in online league, but stamina does matter, I think. Maybe it depends on the field. Like if you're at a high-scoring field, you might get some longer games. I don't know.
Something to keep an eye on as the season unfolds. So I think we should let's move on to the next team in ArcoThunder, another veteran of the
online scene.
He is coaching the Montreal Expos, who home field is Steel Stadium. Taking a look at his roster that he has drafted. He drafted Susan Gore, Tanya Lesko, Earl Abbott, Mikey Thomas, Gwen Sears, Nan Porter, Petra Chekhov, Chad Capel, and Mamie Scumsby.
Yeah, and Mamie he actually picked up as a free agent. He had originally drafted Nate Kowalski, I think, in the 9th round. Dropped him for Mamie. He said it was partly for strategical purposes, but also to send a message to his team that if they don't come with their A game prepared for training camp, it might be next.
I mean, Mamie does have more pitching, it looks like, and probably a little slightly better hitting in exchange for the arm. So yeah, I guess it's all depends on what you prefer.
Yeah, for pitcher, he, in contrast to Loba's team, picked Nan Porter, who is a Kurt Schilling clone. Kurt and Nan went like way... I really wanted to draft them like a round later, and they went earlier than I was expecting, which I think is kind of a good pick. Like if you're going to pick someone who can't hit, you might as well pick someone who like really can't hit, but can be a great pitcher and a great catcher, I think. Although maybe that's a little bit redundant because he also has Mikey, who is, I think it's fair to say that by far his best position is at catcher.
Yeah, Mikey is probably definitely best placed at catcher. The only thing with Mikey is if you have a team that has a lot of speedsters and you get on base and start trying to make, like 5 attempts at stealing, Mikey's low stamina of 24 is going to come into effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know there are a bunch of teams, including me, I think, have catchers who don't have the highest stamina, and that could be a problem for sure. But he has some other options that he could move to catcher if that became a problem.
And he also has lots of pitching, so if you ever needed to, you could also put like Mikey at like third base or something and have Earl pitch and Nan be catcher.
Yeah, that's true.
So lots of defensive options for Arco.
Yeah, I would say I think Earl is probably, I don't know how many like baseballs in the in-game meter, but probably like 9 balls in pitching, right? I think that's what Luann has, something like that. And Kurt has 9 or 10 as compared to Loba, who went more of like a pitcher by committee kind of approach. Yeah, this team also has a couple of big power hitters in Susan Gore, who's a Griffey clone, I believe, and Tanya Lesko, who is a Jose Canseco clone. Seems like it makes a lot of sense for Steele, along with Mikey and Petra.
Yeah, lots of homers and lots of pitching. That's the theme of Arco's team. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes on the road away from Steele. But for the games that he does have at Steele, he should have a good chance of putting up some runs and, winning some games.
I agree. Not a lot of 4 and 5 speed players on this team, for sure. I wonder if that, he might have some issues, like, in the bottom half of the order, trying to find himself in some precarious double play situations, end up with Mikey Thomas on first and Mamie at the plate, situations like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting factor when you do have slow players. Depending on how your lineup is constructed, you have more of a chance to get into double plays, especially if you have those either they can't hit or you have power hitters that, kind of had like that swinging bunt kind of, to the pitcher, to the infield. I don't think that power-ups are going to be as much of a factor, so double plays are not going to be as important as previous seasons.
I think it'll also depend on the field in that, at Steel, if you have a game that's like a 10-8 game, then a power-up isn't going to be the thing that wins or loses you that game. But if you have at a different field, Sandy Flats, power-up might be the thing that wins you a 2-1 game.
Yeah, that's definitely true. If you have pitcher duels, then it's going to mean more of a difference if you can get that double play. But moving on to the next team, the Humongous Hornets of personizzle. Cement Gardens is his chosen home field. It looks like he has some decent power hitters as well, having Xena, one of the best, if not the best, power hitters. Maynard, one of the best speed arm combinations. Star, arguably the fastest. Veronica Lee, Mike Piazza, Omar Stefano, Vicky Kawaguchi, Mary Riley, and Jose Meisenheimer.
Yeah, I really like Personizzle's draft, and as someone who's also playing at Cement Gardens, I was impressed and jealous of how well he played it. Clearly, he was kind of playing to his field with the Maynard and Star picks. You can really kind of see the batting order right in front of you, looking at the roster. You got Star, Maynard, and then Xena to drive him in.
Yeah, that's one thing that he was talking about when I played him in a game yesterday, and he was talking about the Star, Maynard, Xena, 1, 2, 3. That's a pretty powerful combo to lead off the lineup.
It is. This team, as compared to Loba and ArcoThunder's teams, definitely he focused a bit more on batting eye. I guess I should say eye because it affects you in the field as well. And coordination as well. I think a lot of good outfielders. I think coordination is going to be important because people are going to be swinging for home runs. If you don't get a home run, it's going to be like a fly ball to the outfield if you fall short. And, it'll be painful if you have a team that drops a lot of those.
Another thing that I noticed is that he has a lot of players that have high attention as well.
Yeah, sort of tried to look at that in the draft. Can't say it was my top priority stat, but you're right. He definitely does. I know I was thinking that at catcher and first base, it can be pretty painful if your player is off playing air guitar.
There's definitely key positions where that stat is more important. I think pitcher is the other one, just in case you have that. Sure. They're doing whatever and it bounces, you throw it back and then it bounces off, and then you have a Star Moonbeaming at first base. It's gonna steal a free base because of that.
Yeah, totally. Pitcher is rough, the low attention. Yeah, I really like this team and the way it's put together. Piazza had a lot of success last season in the online league. Actually in RBBL last season, Jibbo had Piazza also at Cement Gardens, I believe. I'm not sure exactly how successful. I don't know where I'm going with this because I'm not sure how successful Piazza was for Jibbo.
I think Jibbo said that Piazza was the one player that he regretted having on his team because he hit 2 home runs or something.
Well, yeah, maybe Cement Gardens not the best field for him, but you play road games too, so. Yeah,
that is very, very true. You can't forget about those road games.
I guess this team is going to have Mary Riley catching, most likely. And who would be pitching? You got Jose Meisenheimer. You got Omar Stefano, I guess, probably is the starter, right?
That's what I was thinking. But where else would you put Jose? Second?
I guess you got to hide him somewhere, yeah. And I guess you got to put him in the outfield in whatever spot is.
Or I guess
it's vulnerable, maybe, depending on the field.
I guess at Cement Gardens, maybe you put him in right field.
Maybe. I played a scrimmage the other night against huntstunt at Cement, and, well, I don't want to say too much because I'm still negotiating some trades with people, and I don't want to show my hand too much. But I will say that, at Cement, it's kind of you don't want to throw the ball on the left pitch to the left side of the plate, because then you're putting yourself at risk them hitting one into the alley there for a ground rule double or a home run. So you end up throwing to the right side of the plate a lot. So like at first I was thinking like, oh, I got to put my best outfielder or one of my best fielders in left field to like block those potential alley hits. But then I realized that like actually if we're both just kind of pitching to the right side of the plate, most of the fielder are going to actually, because it's hard to pull those ones to the that are on the right.
I guess it is an interesting thought that I didn't even think of. I guess if you are pitching, for them to hit it to right field, you want to put good defenders on the right side of the field.
I don't think it's optimal. Like we weren't throwing every single pitch to the right side of the plate. 'Cause, you can kind of, it's nice to sort of switch it up and get some variety in your pitching. But it seemed like it didn't make sense to throw too many to the left side of the plate. I don't know. We'll see how that was just kind of something Huntstunt and I were I don't know, neither of us talked about it, but it sort of became the strategy over the course of the game.
So breaking news on the podcast, QuestionMonkey is in trade deals with people.
Just some negotiation. I was thinking it would be super, super cool if we were able to really break some news and a trade happened like during this recording.
Well, if you get a trade deal, feel free to have breaking news.
I'll let you know.
Well, moving on to Steel Eye and the Super-Duper Bombers. Well, hopefully he lives up to his namesake and hits some super-duper bombs at Steel Stadium. It's got Henry Deschennes, Stan Olafson, Grace Tipton, Hillary Vargas, Jim Kiley, Tracy Hoban, Randolph Gluckert, Colleen Clinker, and Machiko Adachi.
Yeah, I guess first impressions here. Another team with a fair number of big arms. Hillary Vargas, who's a Bagwell clone, who has, for whatever reason, has a great arm, 95 arm. Jim Kiley, Tony Delvecchio clone with a 100 arm. And Tracy Hoban, who also has a 100 arm, along with a few more arms in the 80s.
The first thing that I look at this team is that it's not the best for Steel Stadium. There's not a lot of power hitters. I mean, other than Henry and kind of Stan.
Yeah.
You're not going to have players that are, okay, this player most likely is going to hit a home run. It kind of reminds me a little bit of what T-Buzz did in his RBBL draft, as far as not drafting for Steel Stadium.
Yeah, which is not to say that it didn't draft good players, but yeah, I agree.
And it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to relate to wins and losses either. It's just not the most optimal, in my opinion. Other thing that I noticed, I don't know if he's going to do well with the combination of Kiley, Hoban, and Clinker, which I personally drafted in for my RBBL team and ended up trading away Kiley because I didn't like the lack of offense from those three players.
Yeah, that's true. There's three. And Kiley, I guess, can get on base occasionally, maybe. Like, can hit some line drives. But yeah, three, like, defense-first players, or maybe in Colleen's case, like defense and pitching. I guess Machiko is a fourth kind of defense first. Well, I don't know. Machiko for I guess is kind of well-rounded for a draft pick in the 8th or 9th round.
But that's four players basically that are more defensive than offensive. So we'll see if Steel Eye is going to be able to put up enough runs to be able to hang in there with some other teams, or if his defense and pitching will be able to limit the opponent so that he doesn't have to score as many points.
Yeah, my kind of theory, I don't know if there's any truth to this, but the way I think about it is that, like, if you want to defend against a team that hits a lot of home runs or is trying to hit a lot of home runs, then you want good pitching. And if you want to defend against a team that wants to score, like, on balls in play, like singles and doubles, then you want a good defense. And at Steel Stadium, teams are going to try to hit home runs, so I think pitching is important. And he does have good pitching for sure, with Henri, Colleen Clinker, and Grace Tipton. Three, like, very solid pitchers for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Pitching and defense is the name of this team. Interesting combination for Steel, but we'll see how it goes. Well, who's this person? I've never heard of them before.
Yeah, next up is my Green Wombats. Maybe I'll intro the players. Got Sarah Maxwell, who's a Bonds clone, Davey Marion, Sophie Meyer, Yvonne Carter, Jorge Garcia, Karen Donato, Adam Van Doren, Murray Goldman, and Esther French. Yeah, I guess now that I'm looking at my team like this after having looked at a few others, maybe it's given me like a little bit of a fresh look at it. I think compared to a lot of these other teams, I don't have any like bad contact hitters, which a lot of other teams do. which I guess another way of saying that is that I prioritize contact over things like power and arm in some cases, which might be bad or might be good. We'll see.
One thing I know, I mean, you kind of have a lot of like average speed, but no like necessarily like top end speed. So I think you have like what, 1, 2, 3 people with 7, and I think 3 more with 6.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping to get more top end speed in the draft, but it didn't happen for me. Like I think Star and Stu I wanted, and they went like, or whichever one I wanted, whichever one was I was hoping would be available for me, got drafted like a couple picks in front of me. Yeah, speed wise, it just didn't like stars didn't align for me to get that player.
I see what you did there. The stars did not align.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but I think this is a very solid team, especially given that Weber clone is your 9th round pick, at least at this point, without any possible trades. I think this is probably one of the most well-rounded teams as far as what we've seen so far. Definitely has some power with Davey Marion and Sophie Meyer, the McGuire clone.
Yeah, Sophie Meyer is admittedly like not the best fit for Cement Gardens. I will say that I've been in some trade negotiations involving Sophie because she might have more value to teams at other fields, but she provides value other than just being a big power hitter who can hit home runs at other fields. She can also, like if you hit one to the wall in right field, that's probably going to be a single even for someone as slow as Sophie, and she's a very good first baseman. So it was kind of hard for me to trade her without getting a good first baseman in return. I like how my team lines up positionally, on defense. I have some well-defined roles of Murray as my catcher, Esther as my starting pitcher, and Yvonne as my reliever. Sophie at first base. Sarah Maxwell and Davey Marion are my 2 best fielders, and might sort of depend on the field where they go. But I think I have enough fielders to make it work on defense.
I think your experience drafting for certain positions in the RBBL definitely transferred over into this draft. As you mentioned, you kind of have a position or a role in mind for each player as you're drafting.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of luck involved. I was betting and hoping that I'd be able to get my starting catcher and starting pitcher in those last 2 rounds, and for a little bit, at one point I was thinking that I made a bad bet, that I would not be able to get them. But it worked out, and I got Murray in the 8th round and Esther in the 9th. There are a million Weber clones, so I guess there was going to be one of them available in the 9th round.
Yeah, there's 4 of them because there's 2 Webers and 2 clones per player. You got anything else to say about your team?
No, I think it's, as you said, it's a well-rounded team. I think I have some good, well-defined roles. It's not a perfect fit for my home field. I wouldn't say it's a bad fit either. No, I'm looking forward to using them. It's mostly Yvonne I have in RBBL. Otherwise, these are all players that are new to me, so I'm looking forward to it.
No Pablo this time.
No Pablo. Well, I'm lucky he was taken, I think, at 7th or 8th pick, because if you were around at the 20th pick for me, might have had to take him again.
At that point, I think you have to.
Yeah. All right. We can move on to Alex7456's team.
So this is the Kansas City Royals. Home field is Parks Department 2. That's the first team that has that field that we've looked over so far. They have drafted Julie Dunkel, Debbie Nagasawa, Debbie Dingers, as some people like to call them, Barbara Jones, the Cal clone, Parker Collum, Horace Young, Shane Smith, Artie Pimpleton, Marky Du Bois, and Stacy Gordon.
Yeah, it's a team with a few big power hitters for sure. You didn't go for any of those mid-late round power bats like Memoris, Gary Allen, those types of players. But he does have 3 pretty formidable power bats in Julie Dunkel, Debbie, and Parker Collum.
What do you think about the defensive, or what kind of alignment that they might possibly have?
Good question. I guess pitching-wise, you got Julie, who is a great pitcher. She would be good anywhere, of course, but I feel like it'd be nice to have another pitcher so that if you want to or feel like you you need to, you can put her at a critical defensive position. And Alex does have Markey, who's a decent pitcher. Yeah, I guess not the deepest pitching rotation, for sure. Honestly, I'm not sure that's such a bad thing. One thing I was thinking about my team is that I might have drafted too much pitching. I mean, not that too much pitching is bad, but I might have, missed out on some other skills or players because I instead prioritized some players who were good offensively, but would also make good backup pitchers. So yeah, I don't think it's necessarily bad, but yeah, it's not the deepest pitching rotation for sure. Who's going to catch for this team?
I think that's a very good question. I guess Barbara Jones.
Possibly.
That's the one that looks like because you're not going to put Julie at catcher.
Is Barbara Jones the Ripken?
Yes. No +10 stamina though.
Yeah, I think she would make it okay catcher. The 80 arm is not the strongest, and also I think she's just a really good overall fielder, and maybe isn't like the ideal use of her skill set at catcher.
Yeah, I don't think that, obviously that's not the best position for her skill set, but based on everyone else that he's drafted so far, assuming that there's no going to be trades, I think that catcher is going to be a liability because you really want Barbara Jones at like short or third base. And then also you have Debbie and Parker that you're kind of aren't the best defensively. So you kind of have to like somewhat hide them as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think this team has a lot of, like I said, they didn't go for those mid-late round big power bats, but a lot of very solid bats. Horace Young, Jane Smith, Hardy Pimpleton, Markey, Stacy Gordon. A lot of very solid bats who can hit a line drive and get on base. Shane Smith, in particular, was a pick that I really liked, where he got him, and I was hoping I might be able to get him myself. So yeah, there are, like, you can see the makings of a good offense with some players that can hit some like line drive singles and then 3 real big power bats to drive him in at Parks, which is a fairly homer-friendly field, especially like down the lines. But yeah, defense could be their weak point for sure.
I think this team is going to have to win some high scoring. They're going to have to put up some runs in order to win. They're going to have those, win those 10-8 kind of games.
Yep.
If they want to consistently win and possibly make the playoffs.
Agreed.
I think that about sums up that team. Moving on to another one of the admins in this league, Coach Jalen that I assisted in drafting. The Houston Astros at Big City Stadium. Sammy Sosa, Courtney Valentino, Kate O'Toole, Rachel LeBlena, Dmitry Petrovich, Nancy Chin, Derek McCattery, Arlene Perez, and the Todd Father. I'm sure, knowing me, you can kind of see my backyard baseball personality come through with some of the players I drafted.
Oh yeah, for sure. Sure, some Natetastic favorites here, including Rachel.
Yep.
Rachel La Buena, aka Rachel Batted In. Yeah, definitely the first impressions I have are first few rounds. Sammy, Courtney, Kay, and Rachel, and a lot of pitching with Todd, who's really like his best position is pitcher for sure. Like, not that he's gonna be like kill your defense or whatever anywhere else. He'll be okay. But his best position is pitcher. Derek McCattery, similarly, I think he's fast enough to make do at a lot of positions, but he's a good pitcher. And then also Nancy Chin is a solid pitcher.
Yeah, the end of the draft, there was kind of a lot of, okay, is this kind of enough pitching? I think it is.
Yeah, I picked Esther in that last round and like wasn't positive whether I needed that much additional pitching or not, but like, man, it gets to the middle and end of that 9th round, it's slim pickings. Sometimes you don't have much choice. Pick whatever you see as like the only decent player that fills your role.
Yeah, 9th round is always slim pickings. But I think this is a pretty overall solid team. I think what's going to come down to is, can Nancy, Derek, Arlene, and Todd consistently get on base? Mm-hmm. Can that bottom 4 get, those single, double kind of hits?
I agree, and I think your round, 3 through 8 picks are all. This is also a team similar to mine that has not top end speed, but a whole bunch of 6-speed players, and pretty much all of them have, like, as I said, a few of them at the top there Sammy, Courtney, Kay, Rachel have big power, and even Dimitri, Nancy, Derek, Arlene. Like Todd is the only player who it's hard to see him getting like a line drive single, but a lot of players who seem like they should be able to get on base. As far as weaknesses, well, you do have a few big arms, and I don't think you'll have any problem like filling that catcher role. You could use your choice of, I guess I say you, it's going to be Jay Lund who's coaching, but Sammy or Kay could both make great catchers. But other than them, there's definitely some weaker arms that will need to be hidden somewhere. I think this is also going to be an offense first team.
Yeah, I think that it'll take some figuring out. Like I think probably outfield is maybe a little questionable. Other than Courtney, probably like in center, maybe like Dimitri at one in the left field or right field. I think it's a solid team on defense, but it's not like, okay, this is amazing defensively.
Yeah. I wouldn't say the defense is a weakness, but for sure the offense is strength more so than the defense. I think outfield-wise, like you get a bunch of players who can run the ball down and catch it, but won't be the greatest at throwing it in.
Probably if I had to decide like right now, I would probably put Dimitri in left, Courtney in center, and Arlene in right, or some version of that.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that outfield. Even, I don't know, a lot of outfielders don't have strong arms, and that's not so bad necessarily.
I think that sums up that team pretty much, don't you think?
I like the team overall for sure. I thought it was a good draft.
Next up, Coach DJKay and the New York Mets at Sandy Flats. Interesting field choice, to say the least.
Yep. One of two to pick Sandy Flats. Both of the players who picked Sandy Flats seem like they were like, half trolling. It's you pick the right team for Sandy Flats, and it can play to your advantage for sure.
Definitely. Got Leo Wayne, Juan Gonzalez, Sean Green, Kristen Sullivan, Marty Clone, Wendy Parsons, Robbie Bacco, Scotty Roth, Jody Palmer, and Jerry Mahoney.
Yeah, and this team I think was mostly drafted by Loba, although DJKay may have made a couple of picks. Yeah, if we're just trying to run through the overall strengths here, definitely more hitting than speed. As far as the focus of their offense, Leah, Juan, and Sean can all hit home runs. Robbie as well. And Jerry Mahoney, I guess, can hit a home run once in a while, even though he has his weaknesses. But yeah, no super fast players and a couple of slowish ones.
It's got some really good arms for Sandy and Kirsten, Wendy, and Scotty, which you're going to need. And even somewhat, Jody Palmer has a decent arm as well. Robbie Bacco has a decent arm. So you definitely got the arms for Sandy that you need. Kind of average speed. So we'll see if that kind of goes against the Sandy. Because I know that Sandy, you want all the speed you can get.
Yeah, I agree about the arms. I think they are important at Sandy. Arms and power, I would think. Because, it's just hard to... it's a journey, making it all the way around the bases at Sandy.
Yeah, some people like to call it big bats at Sandy Flats.
I haven't heard that, but
that was a term by the famous Oops.
I like that one.
One of our OG RBBL members.
Looking through this team, trying to figure out who's going to fill what role. I guess to pitch, you got Leah Wayne and Jerry Mahoney. Like, I'm sure Jerry might do a lot of pitching, not necessarily because he's better than Leah Wayne, but because you kind of got to find a place to put him, and might as well be pitcher because he's not that fast and doesn't have a great arm. Kristen Sullivan of Marty Cordova clone, also a very good pitcher. So yeah, and Sean Green, also a very good pitcher. I have Yvonne, his clone, and that left hook is killer. So,
yeah, the one thing that stands out there is a lot of pitching on this team.
Yeah, for sure.
Almost some of it's going to be a waste because you probably aren't going to need more than, 3 players that can pitch in a 6-inning game.
I agree. As far as catcher, yeah, like you said, there are a lot of big arms. A couple of them, Wendy Parsons, who's the Pudge Rodriguez clone, and Scotty Roth, are huge arms with very low stamina. May make it hard for them to last a whole game at catcher. But like we said, they have a lot of arms, so they got plenty of options.
Juan as well could be a catcher.
Definitely.
Yeah, so this will be another one that's kind of like defense to be determined.
Yes, that's true. Overall, really, just the stamina of this team is not great. Yeah, I'm imagining like Jerry Mahoney starting at pitcher. You can tire him out a little bit. Might happen rather quickly because he has 30 stamina. You know, wherever he ends up getting put in the field, he's going to be moving real slow. Might be a weak spot.
Maybe that was the game plan with this team all along, is because get all the pitching because the individual players' staminas are all low.
Yeah, that's true. Just make sure you rotate them in and out quickly enough. Nothing wrong with that.
So moving on to Battlehammer's team and the Pittsburgh Pirates. Also at Dirt Yards, this team consists of Pete Wheeler, Claudia Viarte, Alicia Blakely, Tony Lovecchio, Nikki Winston, Wing Kwan, Joella Minotti, Dominic Lowe, and Tiffany Bosworth.
Yeah, first impressions here. I don't know. A few really good bats, a few less good ones who make up for it in other ways. Yeah, it definitely has some pitching. I think it's a somewhat well-balanced team. Maybe, I don't know. I think it's a pretty well-balanced team. It's hard to identify any big weaknesses. They got some arms, they got some speed. I guess they don't have any like huge 90-plus power hitters, but they definitely have a few players who can hit home runs for sure.
I think this team kind of has a little bit of everything because you got Pete Wheeler and Wing Kwan and Claudia that all have some mid to top end speed. You got Joella, you got Alicia Blakely, Claudia, and Pete that can hit home runs. Nikki Winston can also hit home runs. You got some arms of Tony and Nikki, and you got lots of pitching. So a little bit of everything.
You can definitely see the roles with Tiffany and Wing at pitcher, and Tony probably at catcher. Yeah, they have a couple of other arms, but I think it'd be Tony or maybe Nikki Winston at catcher. If I had to really squint and find a weakness to this team, similar to one other team that we reviewed before, I'm not sure which one. There are a few although they have a couple of very fast players, Pete, Claudia, and Wing, there are also some slower players here that'll probably be closer to the bottom of the order in Tiffany, Joella, Nikki, Tony. Potential some double play situations that you could find yourself in for sure. Slow runner on base and a slow runner at the plate.
The one good thing that they have is that other than Tiffany, all the players that have the kind of the 4 and the 5 kind of speed also can have some decent power to them, except for Tony, because Blakely can hit lots of homers, Nikki can hit homers, Joella can hit homers. So even though you're not necessarily, I don't know how much the speed is going to be a factor if you can consistently get those doubles and home runs.
Yep, that's totally true. If you hit it over the fence, double plays are not a problem.
Defense doesn't matter if you hit it over the fence.
Yeah, overall a well-balanced team. I really like it. I liked the Pete pick where they got him because it was 8th overall. Yeah, I like this team for sure. Has some pitching, but not too much pitching. It doesn't seem like it'll be wasted.
Speaking of people that can pitch, moving on to Gonzos and his all-star Jay Green that he drafted in the first round. He is coaching the Oakland Athletics at Super Colosso Dome, another new feature in this season of the online league.
It's aesthetically one of the cooler fields, I think, just because it's you got the lights and you got all the random backyard kids' parents in the stands. I think it's a fun one.
It's one of my favorites personally. I always like playing at that field. Once I've unlocked it, I've used it as my home field for next season or something. We got Jay Green, Nomar Garcia-Parra, Jason Kendall, Tanya Uchida, Ingrid Dahlman, Rachel Colleen, Jason Giambi, Annie Frazier, and Dominic Hoskins. A lot of interesting players, a lot of pros or pro clones on this roster.
Yep.
You got Giambri, Colin, which I believe is a Tony Gwynn clone, Ingrid, which is a Beltran clone. You got Kendall, you got Nomar, you got Annie Frazier.
Yeah, I guess looking at this team, they're not the biggest power hitting team. And Jay Green, of course, is for huge power, does everything well. After that, their next best power hitters are Nomar and Giambi, 81 power each. So that is definitely not their strength. I mean, it doesn't sound so bad having your second and third best power hitters have 81 power, but in comparison to some of the other teams we've looked at, maybe a little lacking power.
I think the one thing that's going to It's a lot of kind of like line drive hitters, but with not the greatest speed. So I think that's
Yeah.
going to probably be the weakness. They might be able to get. Will they able to get reach first, or if they get reach first, will they hit that line drive to the outfield and then the runner going to second gets out? I see
I
a lot of kind
agree.
of
Yeah.
those kind of hits.
Percy Park, Kendall, Tanya, Ingrid Dullman. A lot of these players, I totally agree that I think that'll maybe be a defining kind of question of the season. Can you get on base with those players, like kind of turn outs into singles, singles and doubles with those players? Looking kind of at their defensive alignment, trying to visualize that. A couple of decent pitchers. Dominic in the last round can pitch for sure. Jay Green, of course, can pitch. And Nomar is a very good pitcher, I think, also. I think he was a good draft pick who was taken. But as far as arms, not the strength of the team for sure, but their arms. And in particular, there's no one catcher quality arm on this team.
Probably assuming Jason Kendall to be catcher because he is a catcher.
Yeah, which isn't like, I guess you could do worse than that, but I think especially at Super Colossal Dome, which is like, I think it's like the fastest speed, like it has the same speed as the cement fields, I believe. Let me confirm this. Yes, it has the same speed as Tin Can Alley and Cement Gardens, and Parks and Big City Stadium also have that speed. But yeah, I think there are definitely a lot of kids who are going to be licking their chops, getting ready to steal second on this team. They do, yeah, I guess their strengths. They have pitching, they have a lot of contact. Whether or not they can turn that, like we were saying, turn that into singles and doubles, as opposed to sort of, like ground outs and line outs, remains to be seen. Kendall is a player who, think of him like, feel the same way about the Weber twins, where it's like, yeah, they're like kind of good at a lot of things, but like, what are they really going to do for you? Like, are they hitting home runs? No, not really. Like, is he throwing people out? Not really. Like, yeah, he has no big weaknesses, but he's not a player who's going to like set the table and get on the base every time. And he's also not a player who's going to drive in runners. It's nice to have a well-rounded player, but I have trouble like picking just well-rounded, non-specialist players that high in the draft.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting kind of theme with the different teams as far as like, who just wanted, general all-around players and who wanted, a lot of kind of like specialists at certain things.
Yeah, I think it was WS Missouri was saying in the trade channel that he was trying to trade Anna Gaudreau for more of a specialist, whereas she's sort of a well-rounded player.
I think at that, let's move on to Vissery's team. So you mentioned previously, Vissery is coaching the Blue Monsters at Tin Can Alley. So what do you think about Vissery's team, QuestionMonkey?
Yeah, Vissery has Maria Luna, drafted in the first round, I think at 21st or something. I thought it was a very good pick. Frances Bluer, is she a Larry Walker blend? Is that correct? Or is she no, she's a Keisha.
Yeah, Keisha.
Kipper Jones, Wally Evans, Lance Lambert, Randy Uno, Vincent Sweet, Olive Hussein, and Nate Kowalski. I forget who they originally drafted in the 9th round.
I think it was Amy Bostic.
Yes. They dropped Amy and picked up Nate. Congratulations on your Backyard Baseball Online League contract, Nate. Paid in, I don't know, juice and candy or something.
I'm trying to. It's all for the Yoga Dog sponsorship.
Yeah, I'm still waiting on that Yoga Dogs money.
Yep, that's what I'm waiting for.
Yeah, kind of overall themes here. A lot of power. Like, I guess you can see what Vissery was thinking in that, like, do they need big, giant, 100 power home run bats at Tin Can Alley? No, but you want some, like, 80s power bats to make sure you hit that wall that are fast enough to get singles and doubles out of those hits to the wall. And definitely Vissery got a lot of those types of players.
Yeah, I really like this team. Well drafted for their home field in Tin Can Alley, especially with their top 6 players having 80 power or higher. The bottom 3 is I think is gonna be the main. If there's any questions regarding this team, it's going to be the Vincent Sweet, Olive Hussein, and Nate Kowalski picks/pickups. I think Olive is the biggest weakness on this team. I think Nate really fills his role well as a kind of a defensive specialist and mediocre bat, and kind of similar with Vincent Sweet does, more of a defensive specialist.
Yeah, I guess looking at how this team lines up to pitch, you got Lance and Maria are both good options. Francis has some good pitches, but not the stamina to really go more than an inning or two. But I would think it would be Lance Lambert starting pitcher. You put Maria somewhere like valuable in the field, and she can use her speed and bring her into relief to relieve if necessary. At catcher, I guess Vincent Sweet would be the choice catcher maybe, but there's no like one obvious like shutdown catcher for sure.
Either that or possibly even Kowalski.
Yep, that's true. And Kink and Alley is also a field where players run very fast, like the fastest, in that fastest speed tier of field. So yeah, maybe that could be a potential issue. But offensively at home, I don't think this team will have any trouble. On the road, I'm not sure they'll have much trouble either. But certainly well built for Tin Can Alley.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I expect this team to be one of the top scoring teams this season, especially given it's at Tin Can Alley.
Yeah, and also given Vissery's performance in BBL, in which they're currently like tearing up the whole league. Well, I say currently, but they already like played all their games, like
yeah,
or whatever. So maybe not currently, but
Vissery speed running better than Titanium.
Yeah, really. But yeah, they're setting all sorts of like scoring records in RBBL, just tearing up the league. And a well-drafted team, and could definitely translate to this league.
Moving on to the last team in this conference, Coach Hunt Stunt.
That's how I was saying it, but I'm not totally sure.
I have to ask them about it. How do you actually say this name? Is it Hunt Stunt or is it Hunt's Tunt?
I don't know.
They are playing at Playground Commons and have Roel Mondesi, Larry Walker, Amanda Hellerman, Alexis Weiss, Dante Robinson, Jordan Thorner, Stephanie Morgan, Brett Olson, and Ellen Martinez. Looking at this team, definitely has a lot of good players for certain roles, especially like at pitcher and catcher. Absolutely no questions about, theoretically what you would think to place there with the Randy Johnson clone and have at pitcher and having Mondesi with his 100 arm at catcher and then filling out the rest of the lineup and defense from there. Has one of the meme goats of Brett Olson on his team, so we'll see if the RBBL memes will transfer over to his play this season as well.
Yeah, like I said, I scrimmaged against Huntstunt the other night where they were using this team. And, well, they beat me. It was a close game. I can't 3-2 or something. But a couple of things I noticed. I mean, obviously, Hellerman is a great pitcher. I think they were using Mondesi in the, outfield, and maybe they'll just kind of use Mondesi at, whatever the most crucial position is at that field. And I can't recall who was catching, whether it was Martinez or Larry Walker. But, yeah, very solid team. I was surprised at how solid of an infield they put together with Stephanie at first and Dante and Jordan at, I think, short and second. But overall, I guess, there are a few real huge arms on this team, a few, not quite as good arms. I like the kind of roles on this team. You got some run drivers in Mondesi, Walker, and Alexis Weiss. And you get some players whose role is to get on base in Dante, Jordan, and I guess Brett, if you're lucky.
Or if you're JY, you get on base every single time.
Yeah, that would work. I guess, although there are a couple of players who can drive runs in, there is no one, giant 90-plus power bat. So I suppose you could say that's relative weakness, this team, compared to some others.
I think the one thing is that you don't necessarily have... I mean, I guess Ellen and Stephanie are your two kind of, big kind of weaknesses that don't have... super high-end speed, kind of like Brett does. But I think there is a lot of speed on this team, and I think that's what they're going to have to put their hat on with Mondesi and then Dante and Clone and Brett. All those 4-7 speeds, that's a lot of 7 speeds for one team.
Yeah, I agree. That problem that I described of finding yourself in precarious double play situations is not one that seems like they'll have as much as other teams. A lot of speed all around. Yeah, I mean, we've been going through and doing the pitcher-catcher role thing, but I think it's pretty obvious who's pitching. It's Hellerman, and she can probably last the whole game.
With the 100 stamina.
Yeah, so wisely, I think Hellerman didn't focus too much on pitching otherwise. which makes a lot of sense, I think.
Yeah, and with that, that's going to end I think that was Backyard League. Moving on now to the Front Yard League and
Humongous Melonheads.
I was going to try to make a joke about JY and I drew a blank.
The Humongous Melonheads of Jyknight. They feature Marilyn McDonald, who is a Derek Jeter clone, Xena Estrada. I know that JY has, I think Xena has the same stats as Xenon. He has Xena in BBOL right now, I think.
Yep.
Francesca Whitaker, Jeff Bagwell, Trent Sizemore, Fernando Diaz, Jocinda Smith, Betty Houston, and Matthew LaCruz. What do you see in this team, Nate?
I see Xenon obviously. I think when I look at this team, I see some arms because you got Bagwell, you got Sizemore, you got the defensive monster and Marilyn McDonald, the Jeter clone. Yeah. So I think that the arms and the defense stands out. Also, it's kind of hard not to notice the trio of Brewers on this team, the Bagwell, Diaz, and Jocinda Smith from Silver Bullets RBBL team.
Oh, that's true. Good catch. Yeah.
That obviously means some good luck and vibes for JY this season. You can kind of see kind of what JY likes to do. He likes kind of these kind of players. He's having an amazing season with the clone of Xena in the RBBL. I think he's been destroying it in scrimmages and winning the initial build tournament that we had. So I think that, he's going to keep up what he's been doing and, obviously has to be one of the favorites to make the championship this season.
For sure. Yeah. Xenon definitely can anchor the offense and some sort of well-rounded players around him. Marilyn McDonald, I really wanted JY snipe me. Took her one pick before me in the first round, but I think that's a great first and second round combo, Maryland. And yeah, overall, power hitting wise, of course you get Xenon, and then Xenon or Xenon. What's the pronunciation there?
Or is it Zenon? I think it's Zenon.
Zenon? Okay. Can't say I've ever met anyone in real life named with that name, but I'll go with Zenon. I trust you.
I guess we'll have to go look at the tape and see how Sunny Day pronounces it.
Oh yeah, good question. Yeah,
somewhere.
Yeah, as far as power bats on this team, after Zenon, you got Betty Houston, who has good power, but you don't feel great about counting on her to drive a lot of runs in. So I guess power relative to some other teams isn't their strength, but Zenon might just carry them in that regard, so it won't be an issue. I don't know. As you said, a few big arms and really only one minus arm, one bad arm, which is a very bad arm with Betty's. But I imagine that she will be pitching and surrounding her will be mostly good arms. Fernando can also pitch, but I feel like Betty's arm is so bad. I don't know where you put her.
I think you think you had to put her at pitcher, and then you put either Trent or Jeff at catcher.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think that defense, it's a strong defensive team where get enough really good defensive players to put them in the key positions with like you said, Jeff or Trent at catcher, Marilyn McDonald at short, or wherever you think is the most important position, depending on the field and the opponent. Whichever one of Bagwell and Trent that you don't use at catcher, you could put at third or in the outfield, and then just kind of a bunch of solid enough defensive players to kind of plug the holes so you won't have any weaknesses. Jocinda, very good first baseman. I like the defense. I think they're a well-rounded team, but I would say that it looks like defense will be their strength more so than offense. Not that their offense looks bad. It looks good as well.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of those sentiments that you've had. So, yeah, let's see how JY and the Melonheads will do this season. Moving on to Triggatriz and the Detroit Tigers. Also at Super Colossal Dome, they have Jessica Washersauce, Fred Benson, Randy Johnson, Ezra Travolta, Libby Futterman, Daniel Vogel, PJ Sharif, Butch Sherrod, and Heather Quinn. Obviously, Randy Johnson will be the pitcher, and possibly Jessica Wassersauce at catcher. I think that is the Raul clone. So yeah, to probably have Wassersauce at catcher. It's kind of interesting. They have the opposite, as far as like the clone.
Yeah, that's true.
It's the same, just one has the clone catcher, one has the clone pitcher.
Well, they could also play Ezra at catcher, or Donald Vogel over there. Or, yeah, a lot of big arms on this team for sure. And Jessica, Randy, I guess, is going to be pitching, so you don't really get to utilize his arm as much, but he has a great arm. Ezra, Donald Vogel, and Butch Sherrod all have great arms. I would say maybe the little bit of a weakness for this team is going to be speed, I think. Might not hurt them too much on defense because of all those great arms. Like, it might take you a little bit to get to the ball, but once you get there, you can throw it in real quick. On offense, could be a slight weakness and maybe hurt them a little bit.
Yeah, I think this team is going to be more defensive than offensive. You're going to have to rely on Libby and Fred hitting home runs, I think, to get a lot of their offense. And if a lot of their slower players, like you've mentioned previously, have several other teams, you might be having those double plays with the slow speed and not the best hitting, especially players like Donald and PJ and Butch.
Yeah, definitely in the late rounds, it seems like they kind of, rather than going for like the, if I'm going to pick a player who can't hit, let me pick one who really can't hit and has other strengths. Triggatriz went more the other way and was like, let me just scrounge up the best hitter I can, even if they're not the greatest. Like Heather Quinn, is a good bat for the 8th or 9th round. Butch is also not awful. Are they going to be good enough bats to like actually get on base? I don't know. We'll see. One thing I see about this team, sort of tangential thing, is that their eye stat is pretty high for a lot of these players. Libby, Donald Vogel, Butch Sherrod, Heather, all have very good eyes. Which I wasn't really sure how much to value eye. Like, don't really think of it too much in RBBL. Maybe it could matter a little bit more in online league, where like every pitch is going to be kind of near a corner. There's going to be no like down the middle obvious, oh, I'm definitely swinging at that one. Like, they're all going to be close. So I might be helpful there.
I think eye is more helpful on defense than offense for online, because defense seems to be a little bit more tricky.
That's true.
With online, that I've noticed just from personally playing and hearing other people that have, voiced that opinion. So I think this team is going to be pretty hard to score on with their arms and their pitcher-catcher combination.
Yeah, and Super Colossal Dome, although it is a fast running field, it is a pretty large field as far as hitting home runs. Not that you can't hit home runs there, but yeah, I think hitting against Randy and at Super Colossal Dome, it'll be harder to hit home runs there than against a lot of other teams.
Yep, and I think that sums up that team. So let's move on to BBALL, which was mainly drafted by Loba. Padres are a returning team from last season. And also BBALL is the reigning champion in the online football league.
That's true.
So I had to get a shout out and promote the football league as well. They are currently doing a series of mini tournaments for season 1 of that league. So I think the next one is in a couple weeks. So look out for
October 1st. I'll plug it here. You're welcome, Jibbo, for plugging the tournament. October 1st. More information in the football related channels in the online server.
If you are not in the server for whatever reason, make sure you get a link to the server. That's where you'll find all the majority of the information. And if for some reason that you are not on the Discord channel, make sure you are signed up for the email list that comes out periodically. All the updates and information. So this team has Barry Bonds, Kyle Ripken, Stuart Sullivan, Maya Woodruff, Holly Franklin, Frankie Holly, Sheila Basanti, Mickey O'Connor, and Chucky Flinder. Just looking at this team on paper, I really like this team. Has a lot of speed, has a lot of kind of like doubles kind of power and speed. I just think it's kind of hilarious that they got Frankie Holly and Holly Franklin on the same team.
Yes, that's great. Yeah, I agree. Lots of doubles power. I saw people chatting about how after taking Cal Ripken Jr., who has the plus 10 stamina to everyone else on the team buff. Then took Maya a couple of rounds later, who is a very good player all around, but with low stamina. So I thought he might go for more low stamina players and kind of, maximize that benefit of the Cal buff. But he didn't really do that so much. Overall, some decent stamina even before that buff. Although, maybe these numbers include that. You know what? Actually, the numbers that we're looking at in the sheet, Vissery made this awesome sheet that already builds in that stamina buff. So yeah, I take back what I said. I think he is going to get the benefit of that Ripken plus 10 stamina buff for a lot of these players.
Yeah, I think this is a really solid team. I think, defensively and offensively, Bonds, Ripken, and Maya are a really good, solid defensive kind of cornerstone. And also Holly Franklin, decently, decent pitcher. Mickey can also pitch as well. Holly Franklin can pitch. So kind of a well-rounded team. The only thing I guess you could maybe say is that there's not as much power other than Maya and Frankie Holly.
Yeah, I agree that they definitely have a lot of that doubles power and maybe not the pure big home run power. Although those players can hit some home runs too. But yeah, no Sosa, McGuire, Zenon types. Definitely, looking, as you said, they have a few options at pitcher, which I think is good. They'll be able to kind of rotate them in and out. At catcher, you have Maya, who, even with the Cal Ripken stamina buff, only has 14 stamina. She has a big arm. I don't know whether that's going to be enough to last a whole game at catcher or not. But also some other options at catcher. Bonds has the arm for it. It's not the best use of his skill set, maybe, but can do it. Frankie Holly also has the arm to play catcher. So I think he'll be all right at catcher. Yeah, I agree. It's like a very well-rounded offensive team. Not many easy outs, other than Becky Flinder, who most ninth rounders are easy outs. But other than that, a lot of very solid hitters on this team.
Yeah, having 8 players that can consistently get on base is gonna be really important, and I think that's gonna be one of the keys to his success if he does succeed with this team.
Yeah, for sure. All right, we have DLW 2711 up next with their New York Yankees, led by the Yankee captain himself, Derek Jeter, Emily Lubel, who is a Larry Walker clone, I believe, Sonia Hagen, Luann Louis, Jillian Payne, who is a Jeremy Burnitz clone, Ramona Bennett, Mariana Ralph, Ryan Vanderhook, and Tatiana Jackson. Yeah, what do we see here?
This team is, other than kind of like Jeter and the Walker clone, I think it's kind of, a bunch of players that don't really stand out as much as other teams. Like with the Ryan Vanderhook, Mariana Ralph, the Tanya Jackson.
A lot of, like we were talking about before, about the well-rounded players versus specialists thing. They have a lot of well-rounded players and not as many specialists, for sure. I don't know if that's necessarily bad. Could be alright, because you don't need 100 power to hit a lot of home runs at parks. You can hit a bunch of home runs with 85 power that Emily Lubel has. Maybe even hit a few with the 80 power that Sonia has, the 83 power that Jillian has. So maybe that'll work out at parks.
Yeah, I think it'll depend on, how many, can they get a lot of singles, and that's gonna, and then can they get those doubles and home runs if Lubel and Sonia and Jillian.
Yeah, a lot of well-rounded players for sure. They're gonna, I agree, they're gonna need to get some singles and doubles, and yes, they're gonna need to drive those players in, but they had a lot of singles, doubles hitters for sure. Pitching-wise, what do we have here? We have Luann, who's obviously a great pitcher. We have Ryan Vanderhook, has a big fastball, but only 27 stamina, so you can't really throw too many fastballs with that. But you have one of my favorites, Ramona Bennett. I have in our BBL, I have Ray Tran, who is a clone of Mona's, and he has very good stamina, a couple decent pitches. So yeah, I think they have enough pitching, not too much. At catcher, who's going to play catcher for them?
I think you put Vanderhook at catcher and Luann at pitcher.
Oh yeah, I think you're right.
And then you have Jeter at short, Lubel at third.
I don't know who plays first. Jillian has 3 height, she can play first. It's a little bit of a waste of her arm. That's the situation I'm in with her in our BBL. But she can play first for sure. There are a couple, a few weak arms. Luann has a weak arm, she'll be pitching, so it's not that big a deal. But Ramona, Mariana, and Tatiana all have pretty weak arms that we'll need to figure out where to put. Yeah, I think that could be a slight weakness for them. Offensively, yeah, I'm kind of interested to see how this team does. Like, I would love if the way that this league and like the new build, just like the meta evolves, sports like allows you to succeed with lots of different offensive styles of play. Like whether you're going for a lot of home runs or more kind of small ball singles, doubles. So I'm hopeful that this team does well, and that it's not just like, oh, home runs become the only way to score.
I think that'll be an interesting thing to see with this team and all the other teams that are similarly built to this one as well. I think we move on. Let's move on to LoseyLoser / Ace, one of the OG members of the RBBL, one of the best players in RBBL history. Then the Tampa Bay Devil Rays are at Sandy Flats. Got Marcellus Marks, Keisha Phillips, Faye Dawson, Joan May, Isabella Morelli, Perry Marks, Vic Souffle, Ricky Johnson, and Aaron Harris. So what do you think about LoseyLoser? Is this a losey roster or is this a winning roster?
I don't know. I think he definitely went like, to his style. Sandy Flats, I mean, just like his RBBL team. Well, is he at Sandy this season?
He's at, it was at Dirt Yards.
Dirt Yards, okay, yes. But last season he was at Sandy, correct?
Yes.
And I think picked a lot of big arms and big power bats. And he's done that here for sure. A lot of big power bats, a lot of big arms, and then at the end of the draft, kind of just like prioritized fielding for the most part, having got his bats. So kind of like a top-heavy offense. Can't really rely on those bottom three spots in the batting order for very much. That being Vic, Ricky, and Aaron. I assume they're going to be the bottom three, or I don't know how I'll set it up, but huge power from the six in front of them.
For sure, it's definitely a roster that is very reminiscent of the style that he likes to play with and the kind of players that he likes. Surprised he didn't get Nikki Winston.
Yeah, didn't manage to get Nikki or Molly.
Yeah, then it really would have been like one of his RBBL rosters.
Yeah, I guess this team, weaknesses, I guess speed a little bit. Joan, on offense, like she's probably either hitting a home run or not getting it on base. Similar for Perry. So I guess you could say speed isn't that much of an issue. But, even those players, you wind up on first base occasionally. Like especially at a place like Sandy, like you hit one like 300 feet out to right center field. Joan May, over everyone's head, not far enough for a home run. Joan May is, struggling her way out to first base. And then all of a sudden you might find yourself in a spot where you're trying to avoid a double play. Yeah, they could run into that issue a tiny bit, especially at Sandy.
I think that's something that you kind of have to deal with. It's kind of like any kind of team at Sandy, you might have that factor. Yes. But I think knowing the skill set of this player and of Ace, that, he's pretty good at hitting home runs or pretty much anything in this game. So I don't think double plays are going to be as much of a factor as, other coaches. You kind of just have to, trust that, that he's going to be able to do, what he needs to do with the roster and that he's not going to put himself into precarious situations.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested in seeing, especially after JY, came over, joined the tournament, and really just wrecked everyone for the most part. Interested in seeing how some of the other RBBL players who've been playing a long time, like Ace, LoseyLoser, how they perform. I don't disagree. I think skills probably will translate, but we haven't seen it yet. So.
And sometimes he likes to have fun to fit in. I'll just draft this player for the fun of it because I feel like it. Yeah, but I think that there's a good chance to him and JY are probably one of the the top two, arguably, in this conference or league. So it'd be really interesting to see how they match up compared to all other teams.
Yeah, especially like how they match up compared to like the online league sort of veterans. I mean, no one's that much of a veteran at this point because this is only our kind of third or really like second and a half season. But yeah, how the RBBL versus online league matchups go. So who's gonna pitch for this team? I guess we got Aaron Harris can pitch a little bit. Isabella Morelli can pitch. I guess those are going to be their main pitchers.
I think Aaron Harris is probably their pitcher, but you never know. You could have Perry Marks, you could have Vic Souffle, You could have Marcellus pitch.
Yeah, a few options. No, like one incredible.
Joan May has a 93 slow ball.
Yeah, we'll see also how definitely some teams went for the kind of pitcher by committee, get a few solid pitchers, and then other teams just kind of like drafted one great pitcher and that's it. So we'll see how that kind of choice plays out. At catcher, a lot of options, like we said, a lot of big arm. Maybe Isabel catcher, could be Vic.
Yeah, I think one of those two probably for catcher. I would say probably Isabel. Vic has a little bit more speed, so it could be more useful to kind of look at the infield.
Yeah, I'm trying to imagine who. I know last season in our BBL, when he played at Sandy, he had Kathy Wolf in center field, I believe, which is a great fit because there's a whole lot of room out there and you need someone who can chase the ball down and get back in.
I don't know, was that defense last season was a nightmare. Probably one of the toughest AI defenses that was not a Jebbo Open defense that I've faced.
Yeah, that was a great defense. I think center field at Sandy is a key position. So I'm wondering who that player is going to be. Could be Vic if decide to go with someone else at catcher. Could be Keisha, maybe.
Marcellus.
Yep, Marcellus is certainly fast enough. Doesn't have the greatest arm, but you can sort of like run it down and then run it halfway back in before you throw it. Overall, yeah, it's a very good team. Like he, as opposed to DLW, went for a lot of like kind of solid doubles kind of hitters. Loser, ace, going home run or bust here. And yeah, I think a lot of home runs. Although there are a lot of arms, I don't know. I wonder how the defense will fare on the road, where on fields where like speed and coordination are a little bit more important than arm. But I think at home it'll be tough to score against him.
For sure. Next on the list is a newcomer to this league, but not a newcomer to online play. Coach Willigan at Parks Department number 2, Texas Rangers. They have Lindsay Felgate, Zoe Mallory, Mo Vaughn, Christina Beatty, Lena Ang, Whitney Singh, Fabian Callahan, Gail Weinman, and Rosina Phelps. Definitely a lot of kind of home run hitters because you got Lindsay, you got Mo, you got Beatty, you got Fabian. So you got a lot of home run hitters that can, hit home runs at the short field at Parks. And then you also got Zoe that has some speed. You got Lindsay that has some speed. Whitney.
Yeah, I agree. Well-rounded speed. Yeah, I guess I should add, I was kind of talking about the online league versus our BBL, two different sort of groups, origins of players who are going to come together. There's also this third group of the original online server, Backyard Baseball online players back from the early 2000s when the server was up. That Willigan and Killerbat were both playing. And maybe there's someone else who in the league who also said that they played back in the day. I can't remember who it was.
I know there was a few of them, but those are the two that I remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of home run hitters on this team. Some top-end speed for sure. I mean, you get a couple of slow players in Christina, who's a Frank Thomas clone, and Fabian. But Fab, I mean, obviously she brings power to the table. And Christina, on defense at least, she'll probably be pitching, so speed isn't as much of an issue there as it would be at some other positions. And yeah, a couple of very fast players as well. Lindsay, Zoe, and Whitney. Who's gonna catch for this team?
I think Lena.
Yeah, I think you're right. Whitney can catch, Christina can pitch, Mo, great first baseman, and then
Fabian, you gotta hide somewhere, and then I think the rest just kind of fills in.
Yeah, I think so. I think a bunch of, other than Fabian, like you said, a bunch of solid fielders. Able to clone. I think someone you can put at kind of the most, whatever you see is the most critical position. I keep like using that phrase, whereas in our BBL, I think players like her and like Jeter would, like, you 100% put it short. In this league, I'm not so sure because like I just think there are going to be a lot of balls hit to the outfield. I think, like I was describing about how at cement people are going to pitch to the right side of the plate, leading to balls hit to the right side of the field. They're like the position of importance might be totally different depending on the field and the matchup. But whoever your best well-rounded defensive player is, you have someone who run, can catch, and throw.
Yeah, I think there might be some more like mid-game defensive rearrangements made famous by the runner-up of the past 2 seasons, Rajas. He had always had a lot of inner game defensive maneuvering.
Yeah, overall, this team, I think it's pretty balanced team. They got some big power. Yeah, they have some slow players, but they also have some fast players. I think in the field, like, well, they only have one huge arm in Lena. I don't know. You can get away with only one huge arm. You put her at catcher and have everyone else kind of fill in the gaps. I like the team for sure, and they went. They have plenty of pitching. Christina, one of the best pitchers in the league, and then a couple other solid pitchers as well, including Whitney.
Yeah, so that looks like a solid roster by one of the OG online players. Now moving on to one of more of a newcomer to the different leagues. Coach Code has done some of the side seasons in RBBL, and now this is his first time being in one of the main seasons of either league. So it'll be really interesting to see how he's done. He's done pretty well on all the kind of side tournaments that he's done. Pretty solid roster that he has built. Nobody really standing out that's, a lot of overall solid players that are not specialists. Like we said, some people are going towards the specialist route versus some people one of the all-around players. This is definitely one of the all-around rosters. You got the Don Cozart, the Lofton clone, the Brendan the Nomar clone. You got the Kendall clone, Lisa, Pudge, Billie Jean, Boosted Kimmy, Thor Herring, and Jomar. Yeah, so, on paper, you might not think this team can do much, but I think that this team is actually going to surprise some people. I think that Coach Code is probably one of the under the radar players in this league.
I agree. I was thinking the same thing because although they haven't played in either of the two prior online league seasons, I often see them playing pickup games. I think I've played pickup games against them and they're pretty good. So I agree that it should not be overlooked. Yeah, the roster, a bunch of well-rounded players. If you had to pick a weakness, I think you'd have to say their power. Overall, just no one big power hitter. They're another team that's going to rely on a lot of singles and doubles. They have some players.
What do you mean they have no power? They have Johnny Omar. That's all the power you need.
It's true. Facts. Yeah. I liked how Johnny Omar was the last pick in the draft. And then, a couple days later, Coach Code just posted in, the trades channel saying, Johnny Omar is available. If anyone want to trade for him. Well, he was the last pick in the draft, so if anyone wanted him, they would have picked him.
Yeah, that's true. And then I put that I wanted him.
Yeah.
Just trying to be memeing and joking. Yeah. I like to have jokes and be funny every once in a while.
I liked it. I thought it was funny.
Yeah, so this is a solid team. You got probably Lisa at pitcher and Ivan at catcher, and then also you kind of have if you didn't want to do that, if you wanted to put Kirkos at catcher and Ivan somewhere. Also, you got Billie Jean, solid first baseman. Kimmy at home probably is either at third base or outfield. I think that the most kind of controversial pick of this one was Thor, but I think that Thor is definitely could be a useful player, especially with I did not realize that he had 100 slow ball, and I knew he had a good arm, but I didn't know it was 98. So I think he was looking at Thor for pitcher. So maybe that's what's gonna happen.
Yeah, pitcher or catcher. It's a good question. Who's gonna pitch on this team? Brenda can pitch for sure. She's a Nomar clone. I like Nomar's pitch. Really, you just need two very good pitches. I feel like, and you'll be good. And she has two pretty good pitches in the left hook and heat, stamina to go for most of the game. But yeah, well, I guess Lisa can also pitch. Yeah, Lisa's also a very good pitcher. So it's an interesting team.
Yeah, definitely excited to see how this team does.
I think while Thor is very slow, besides that, it's pretty well-rounded speed-wise. The rest of the team.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking forward to this team.
I think they're gonna. There's a lot of ground to cover on Ekman Acres, and I think they have some players who can cover that ground, which is good.
Moving on to the next team, Colby 2D, one of the newcomers to the Discord. They are at Steel Stadium, and they have Cheryl Reynolds, Jane Davis, Mr. Clanky, the Weber twins, Ernie, Melissa Waters, Bobby Bullgreen, and Olga Tollefson. This is an interesting team. You got the Weber twins, you got the boosted Ernie, you got Cheryl, Clanky. A lot of really good players on this team. I did not realize kind of how solid this team was until just looking at it right now.
He was chatting with me and maybe others during the draft for like idea bouncing and chatting about picks. And I'm really interested and curious to see how this team performs. Just because a lot of buffs with the Weber twins and Ernie. Got Mr. Clanky, who's kind of like a huge question mark, just like such a unique player. I mean, one just like aesthetically and like lore wise, he's a robot. But as far as on-field play, he's just got these like extreme stats: unlimited stamina, 100 eye, 100 arm, 100 attention, 1 aggression. I guess he'll obviously be the catcher. Yeah, so I'm interested to see how Clanky performs, since you'll be able to sprint with him nonstop, and because like in online league, there's no like anti-cheese kind of. Well, there are anti-cheese rules, but there's nothing preventing you from kind of like getting in a pickle and trying to, make the defense make an error. And so it'll be interesting to see if he can find his way into and out of some pickles and make some base running magic happen.
So with Clanky not being able to pitch, who do you think will be pitching?
It's a very good question. There's no one like standout pitcher. I guess you got a few choices. You got Melissa, you got Bobby, Olga can pitch an inning maybe. Weber twins have good stamina, but like not great stuff. Not great pitches. Maybe a slight weakness with them, I guess. Maybe they're like kind of top end pitching. Like I think they have enough pitchers and enough stamina to make it through the game just fine. But they don't have many like players with those like big like 90 and 100 level pitches.
You think the only pitch they have is Olga's fastball, and with having a stamina of 29, it's not gonna pitch that you're gonna want to throw that often.
Exactly. Yeah. I guess you got Clanky catching. You'll have one of those. Ernie can also pitch, I guess, but he's another player with good stamina, but not great pitches. You'll have Ernie at first. You'll have one of those last 3 draft picks pitching. Have to find a place for the other 2. Yeah, when I was talking to him, he was asking about picking the Webers, and I was like, that's fine, and in fact, could even be good. But you're sort of like, you might be locking yourself into a defense-first team, because you're kind of committing to 2 draft picks who are better defensively than they are offensively, I would say. But despite that, wound up with a few power hitters, and Cheryl and Jane being the biggest of them, along with Melissa, who's a Giambi clone, I think, and Bobby can also hit some home runs. So yeah, do you think it's a good steal team?
I think this is a good. I think even Clanky could hit balls over the center field area. I think with Cheryl and Jane, you definitely, if you split them up in the order, have like a 3-5 or 3 kind of 6 kind of split or something, where you have kind of like the Webers and Clanky kind of get on base, and then you try to hit some home runs with those 2.
Yeah, to me, I think like Cheryl and Jane are going to be able to hit home runs at steal. The bigger question mark, as you just mentioned, is like, are Clanky, Ernie, and the Webers, who all have kind of that 60s, 70s batting power, good contact, are they going to be able to get on base for Cheryl and Jane to drive them in? And if they are, I think this team could be very good offensively. And if not, I still think they'll be fine at steal, but might not have as much success.
It'll be definitely interesting to see how they do. And I don't necessarily, and since they're newer, kind of having a experimental team will be interesting to see how it all turns out.
All right, we got Killerbat next, another old school online player. He has the Baltimore Orioles at Big City Stadium. Drafted Pablo, Ahmed Khan, Mandy Coolidge, Frank Thomas, Amir Khan, Ruth Prout, Cindy Chang, Gary Allen, and Serena DeMonte. Yeah, what do you see with this team? What trends overall?
Homers, and more homers. Because you got Pablo, that enough said. You got the Khan brothers, enough said. You got Mandy Coolidge, who can hit, home runs and pitch. The kind of the ideal Angela Otani kind of player. Frank Thomas, the Big Hurt, Gary Allen, All-Star on the Blue Angels for RBBL. And then you got Roof and Cindy that can get on base, and then Serena DeMonte that has the kind of like the fielding specialist in round 9 with the 100 arm. So I think this team definitely looks very fun to play with. I think this is probably out of all the teams that I've seen, like if I saw this and like, okay, this would be a really fun roster to play with.
Yeah, I agree. Looks like a fun team. A lot of home runs. Great pitching. I guess their relative weakness will be in the field. Like Serena has a great arm. After that, no real big arms. Pablo obviously is near and dear to my heart, but defense is not his strong suit. Yeah, and a lot of like just so arms that you can get away with a couple of them, but if you have a team full of so arms, then you're going to end up with so arms at like key positions.
Yeah, this team is definitely going to have to hit some home runs and score some runs in order to win, because people are going to be able to score on them quite a bit if they get the ball in play. But with Frank Thomas and Mandy, they're going to be pitching for strikeouts. So if Killer can strike people out and hit home runs, has a good shot at the playoffs, in my opinion.
I agree.
Moving on to Missouri, who is at Ekman Acres and has Jose, Angela, Anna Gaudreau, Samuel Middleton, Alex Gonzalez, Liz Kinghorn, Rafael Hendricks, L'Oreal Akaye, and Andres Eisman.
Yeah. Looking at this team, got a handful of power hitters for sure. And I guess weaknesses, they have a few pretty slow players and a few players with subpar arms. So those could be their weaknesses. Yeah, definitely plenty of power. Jose, Angela, Anna Gaudreau, and Rafael. And Samuel Middleton can also hit. Just like, who's going to get on base for them?
Gonzalez, Liz Kinghorn.
Yeah, and they can get on base for sure. But they're not exactly like, they're no Maynard, McElroy.
That is definitely true. Gaudreau, I think Anna, Alex, and Liz are going to be the ones to get on base, and then Canseco, Middleton, Angela, and Rafael are going to be the ones hitting home runs. Whatever you get from L'Oreal and Andres is, an added bonus.
I guess this team, you got to have Angela pitching, and at catcher, I guess you have Jose.
You have an 80, the high for an arm is not the best.
Arm definitely a weakness for this team.
I mean, if you wanted Jose somewhere else, I mean, you could possibly put Andres there. I mean, 75 and 75 versus 80 and 80 is probably not that much of a difference, since you don't already have an ideal arm to begin with. Possibly might be a candidate for possibly have Andres there, and then when someone gets on base, put Jose behind the plate.
Yeah, might have to do some things like that.
Yeah, so the defense is going to be the questionable thing with this team, I think.
For sure. Yeah, their pitching will be fine with Angela, but defense will be tough for them. They do have some great power hitters. Ekman is not the easiest field to hit home runs. So yeah, we'll see how that works out.
Moving on to the Little Fishes and Chris at Parks Department number 2. Chris, one of the RBBL members that is moving over to the online league this season. He has Kenny Lofton, Alex Rodriguez, Mark McGuire, Timmy Unger, Carlos Beltran, Schilling, Ray Tran, Paco, and Felix Grant. This is an interesting roster. 5 different pro players on this team. So very kind of RBBL kind of asks. Chris usually likes defensive teams. So do you see kind of a defensive, does this kind of line up with his traditional play style?
Bit. I mean, certainly those, rounds 1 and 2 picks, Kenny Lofton and A-Rod, are both very good defensive players. Also good offensive players, but definitely good on defense. Beltran, Schilling are both like defense first picks. So yeah, I think it'll be a strong defensive team, good pitching team. As far as offense, after McGuire, not very much power, I think. So I think I'm going to be relying on McGuire a lot to drive in runs. some good players who can get on base in Lofton, A-Rod, Timmy Unger, Beltran and Raytran. Yes, can both get on base. I think McGuire's going to need to drive in a lot of runs for this team to put up good scores.
Yeah, this definitely is a kind of a speed and defense pitching team. Going to be a lot of people on base. Can they drive him in? That's going to be the big question. And can Mark or probably Alex Rodriguez be the next kind of player that I would think that could possibly be an RBI threat for them? Solid team. Obviously, probably you're going to have Kurt pitching. And I don't know who you put at catcher.
Ray pitching and Kurt catching, although it seems like a little bit of a waste of his pitching ability.
Based off of the stats, that's probably the best option, even though it might seem like a waste of Kurt's abilities at pitcher.
Yeah, I think that's okay. And maybe against some teams, you'll be able to get away with putting like A-Rod at catcher or something if you want to use Kurt at pitcher.
And having a speedy catcher could be beneficial in some cases.
Yeah, I agree.
I think this is it's a lot of like the RVBL players have. They kind of have their own style that they like to go with, and no difference here with Chris.
For sure. Prioritizing that speed and fast, well-rounded players, play some defense.
Next team that we got is Matitude and the Brewers. At Cement Gardens, got Griffey, Larkin, Vlad, Burnitz, Dobbs, Gwynn, Henny, Kawaguchi, Rose Flugel, and Stevie Lint. So a lot of only 2 generics, only waiting to the last 2 rounds to take any. So don't know if that was by design or just the players that were around at that time or unfamiliarity with the generics, so sticking to players that they knew what to do with and how they operated. So
yeah, I think during the draft I was a little skeptical, but looking at it now, I kind of like this roster. I think they have just enough. Like they have some good arms. You can kind of see how the roles would line up. You got Ronnie and Kenny pitch. You got a bunch of options at catcher, but I think Vlad and then Larkin, Griffey, Burnitz, all very good arms and solid fielders. Gwynn's a good first baseman. I think it's a team that sort of like their roster fits together somewhat well. I don't know if it matches up with their home field all that perfectly.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if it's the best for Cement Gardens, but I think the top kind of like all the non-generic players that they picked kind of were kind of going along with the same kind of theme that Itanium did after he made all those trades. Players that can, have that kind of line drive, kind of power, just get on base. One thing that I don't know if he'll end up regretting is the Tony Gwynn pick in the 6th round. Based on the previous season, he's one of the least liked players from last season. So it'll be interesting to see how he does with Tony Gwynn, or also if the new build changes anything. I think probably you have Kenny at pitcher, like you said, Vlad at catcher. I mean, you could possibly put Ronnie there as well, but not too many options for catcher. I think this team is kind of average, middle of the pack.
Yeah, I think it's a well-rounded offensive team, and I think, like we were saying on defense, they have players to fill the kind of key roles that you really need to fill, as far as pitcher, catcher, first base, and then a couple of good all-around fielders to put crucial spots. Griffey, I don't know, some people were saying that picking him was a reach, but I think, I don't know, you can't argue with the Season 1 MVP. He's for power, great fielder. I don't know, I think it was a perfectly fine pick.
Can't argue with results.
Yeah. At Cement, it's not the most lefty-friendly field. There's that big building out there in right field.
But with that power, you can, as we've seen from other games that have been at Cement Gardens, you hit on that wall and you don't know where it's going to go, and you can kind of have those super high bounces, and with Griffey's speed, it can turn into a triple or an inside the park home run.
That's true. Yeah, very good point.
So you never know how it's gonna do. Solid team. Interesting to see how Manitude will do on this season.
Yeah,
And was that the last team? I think it was that was the last team.
it was.
That's all the teams. Kind of our initial thoughts on the draft and how things were gonna go. Do you have any predictions on possibly who's gonna make the finals initially?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's hard to say. I think out of the backyard league, I'm looking at Loba, defending champ. I'm looking at Vissery for sure, just based on what they're doing in our BBL, and also just because I really like that team. In the front yard league, I mean, you got to look at JY and LoseyLoser just based on their kind of pedigree. But I'm also have an eye on Killerbat's team. He obviously has a lot of experience as a player playing back in the day. His team, he kind of like he bet, he put all his chips on big bats. And if this meta is still kind of like we're still figuring out, but a couple of months, you might all be saying like, man, I guess big power bats are the way to score. And if that's the case, then bet right. What are you thinking for as potential finalists?
Yeah, I think that obviously, I think if you went kind of what certain people would call kind of the favorites, I think most people would maybe think of Loba out of the backyard and either JY or Loser in the front yard. But I think like you said, you can't count out I know Killerbat and Willigan have been doing a lot of scrimmages. They've been playing pretty well so far. I think obviously you can't count out. I think Vissery is going to do really well. I think you're going to do really well. And also you got personizzle and Arco in the backyard league that made the playoffs before.
Yeah.
So it's going to be there's a lot of a good mix of competition versus people that were in the RBBL, people that initially were in it 20 years ago, and people that are mainly coming from the online league initially. So it'll be interesting to kind of see like which kind of faction prevails.
Yeah, personizzle, I didn't mention my first go around there, but I really like his roster. And I think it's a really good fit for Cement Gardens. They have a couple seasons of experience in the online league. I know they've been playing a couple of scrimmages here and there. I mean, just like I was saying about Killerbat, like if it turns out that the meta is like big power bats, the way to win, then Killerbat is going to be in good shape. But if it turns out that the meta is that like we've been undervaluing speed a little bit, then personizzle is going to be in very good shape with his roster. So we'll see. I think there's a lot of question marks. Like it's kind of first season with this build and rule set.
Yeah, a lot of interesting storylines that will be developing throughout the entire season. Well, I think that's gonna do it for both of us. Thanks for listening to the this podcast, and hopefully, we'll have a lot more news and updates regarding everything backyard sports in future episodes. Thanks for taking your time to listen to us, and make sure you catch this on wherever we decide to post it, and make sure you follow the Twitch channel, the YouTube, the Twitter, and make sure you are joining the Discord. So until next time, see you later.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.